Hello. So I was thinking about the concept of eternal compassion and how I have tried to foster that, and it's been much more helpful than the state and way of thinking that everything is doom and gloom and terrible and doomerism and everything is horrible and everything is ending in catastrophizing, because that's never actually been helpful. Not even once. Not even once. Like, it is a mentality that I understand its origins. I'm not saying it's irrational, and if anything, it's extremely irrational to see doom and gloom, but it doesn't allow for the expansion of compassion. So when I speak about compassion, just to get some definitions down, I look at the word itself, like the spelling of compassion, and I kind of surmised a way to think about it as two separate words, as calm and passion. Calm being that cool sense of, relaxation and not panicking, not being anxious, not being. I think calm also has a sense of happiness to it too. It doesn't always have to have happiness. It can also be rather neutral, but never sadness. I don't think calm. I think you can be calm and sad, but I don't really associate it with calmness necessarily. I think sadness is usually expressed in a downtrodden way, and I wouldn't say that that person is calm. If anything, they're dreading and they just can't really express it in much more higher frequency. So I would say it's just an expression of another negative, and I don't think calm is a negative. I think calm is a overall positive, honestly. So when I associate calm with compassion, I also think it has to be calm. But then the second word almost sounds oxymoronic, because you're like, wait, how can you be passionate and calm at the same time? Isn't passion about being fiery? But I think passion is more correlated for me with a conviction. Like, when you're passionate about something, you're committed to it, you are loyal to it, you stand by it. So when I mix the two words, calm and passion, it comes together with, an expression of always trying to center yourself in a calm way and being convicted that when you calm yourself down, it's easier to be kinder to yourself, because you find kind ways to calm yourself down. I think some people find mean ways to calm themselves down, and I don't think that's sustainable. Because if you're like, oh, you're being so, insert negative trait here, lazy, stupid, ungrateful, and you're saying all these things, and as true as they might be in the situation, they don't necessarily help you not be those things. They just point them out and solidify the identity of them. I'm not saying you can't point out when you were an asshole, but to rather point out why you were an asshole is more compassionate. It looks for an explanation that is calming and is dedicated to that calm, is loyal to that calm. And I know the separation of words, semantics, and all these things, most people might not agree with it, but in practical use, I would say when you're trying to expand compassion eternally, I would say view even negative qualities compassionately. That's the most difficult thing for most people, because they're like, oh, what if someone's being extremely mean to me? I would say that they're, of course, lacking in compassion, and you can't really help someone who's lacking in compassion because they're also lacking in tolerance and kindness. So I'm not going to be like, oh, just be kinder to the Nazis. I would just say, avoid and educate other people on why the Nazis are not a good vibe, because they're not nice people. I use Nazis as an extreme, but lots of people have Nazi tendencies. Oh, that sounds horrible, but there are, especially in this time, I think we're having a resurgence of fascist ideologies. Oh, yeah, my political leanings are showing, but people aren't kind. They're callous and cruel and want you to fit into a rigid norm that they don't even fit into. No one fits into that norm. Someone could visually fit into it, but mentally you can't. It has so many requirements of being the perfect, ideal person. And that's not how humans function. Humans are honestly identified through their imperfections, but viewing it compassionately works so much better than trying to weed it out, because that sounds like eugenics. It is eugenics. So when I go into eternal compassion, I can still see cruel acts as blips of someone's personality, well, not personality, but blips of someone's identity where they weren't being compassionate, but I think our general state as humans and our most comfortable state is in being compassionate, because when I'm being kind to myself, when I'm being gentle with myself, and I'm trying to understand why my faults are my faults and how I have, adopted them in some way and they aren't part of like who I am in my flesh, I start to realize that, oh, compassion really does allow for expansion and growth, and it's the most functional way to survive. Like I have to see people compassionately, even when like hard things are happening around me, even when I see like the most terrible, I see it through the lens of compassion, even when it's like the lack of compassion. I understand it through compassion. I'm like, oh, you can't fully be happy when you don't have compassion, because I mean, you're only translating that through like an external point of like validation, or an internal, but that goes into like a lot of psychology. Either way, and that's a much longer video, and I feel like let's keep it short. I feel like I've already revealed a lot of my hand and what kind of person I am, but I don't mind that much. I just feel like let's gradually get into it and stay on topic. So this perspective has helped me be more productive, because I do not view like productivity as, if I fail, that is, I am the failure. It is just something that I have failed at. And failure is, again, subjective, and, it keeps on expanding. Compassion is curious. It doesn't immediately judge you. It doesn't immediately, it tries to see how it can help. Like, that's the mindset of compassion. Like, how can I help first myself and then others? Like, that expansion and that constant thinking. And it's been more productive, it's been more helpful, and I don't know how to further express that to people listening. But if you're listening, you're probably curious on how you can increase your compassion. And I say, all those examples people give you on like how you should speak to yourself as though you aren't yourself in your own flesh are extremely important. Actually, speak to yourself as though you are your pet kitten or your pet dog, or cute little things like your baby, your mother. I mean, like, how would you speak to your mother? Would you speak to your mother the way you speak to yourself? If you don't have a great mother, like, think about the person you see as compassionate and pretend you're talking to them when you're talking to yourself. Sometimes, not necessarily pretend, but think about how they would talk to you and make that the way you talk to yourself. Like, the kindest person in your life, or the person you think is as kind as can be, try and always see it like outside of just yourself, because forming our identities is a very external thing, I've realized. Of course, it's what you allow in from the external, but I think we don't have much of a say a lot of times. We actually just end up taking it all in, but then how we interpret it is really up to us then. I think that is where we make the choice to be like, oh, how do I choose to see this in a malicious, terrible way, which will reinforce the idea that people are malicious and terrible and always looking to stab me in the back. I mean, some people might be interested in doing that, and to those people I say, I'm not interested in being around you, and that's fine, and that's great that you're like that, I guess, if it works for you, but no, it doesn't work for me. And I think lots of people try and say, no, those people should be weeded out, and again, that doesn't sound too compassionate. I don't think that's going to be helpful. I like rehabilitation, or the attempt for rehabilitation, even with the possibility of never being rehabilitated, because that is a compassionate lens. I want to always see myself in that lens too. When I do something bad, maybe not to the extent that I think of like unforgivable and irredeemable based off my values again, but I'm not going to make like this strong moral judgment immediately to be like, this is a horrible, terrible person, because good people do terrible things and bad people do good things sometimes. And I mean, when you look at that sentence, you're like, okay, but what makes a bad person? What makes a good person? What makes a good action? What makes a bad action? And then you can fill in the blanks, but you're allowing yourself to see more nuance in the situation, to see that a majority of a person can, you can't always be there for all the experiences. When you have a negative experience with someone, I think viewing it through a compassionate lens is to say you didn't deserve that, but also they're going through something that they shouldn't be expressing to other people because it hurts other people, especially if the intention was to hurt. Because I'm never saying that people will never intentionally hurt you, obviously, but to see it through compassion is where it becomes something that you've internalized the external with love still, even when it's hurting you. And I think that's helpful to someone. It's helpful to me.